He terrorized a city for 3 decades. Not a phantom actor in the night, but a man who buried his crimes beneath casseroles and council minutes. He stalked neighborhoods, abducted strangers, and returned again and again to the habit that sustained him: photographing, cataloging, and then mailing taunts to the press and police. For 30 years, the letters landed on editors' desks, and the city learned to listen for the sound of its own name in a stranger's boast. What made the case more terrible was the disguise. He was Sunday school calm and Boy Scout patient, a former airman who knew precision, and a husband who clipped school permission slips. He fixed home alarms for neighbors and chaired the church council. He was, as townspeople said with stunned insistence, one of us. Even his daughter later said she could not fathom that the man who walked her to school had been living a secret life of trophies and transgressions. And yet monsters often fall by some small human error: a signature left too plainly, a file misdirected, a scrap of digital paper that refused to stay hidden. That single mistake pulled back the ordinary curtain. When investigators finally traced the trail, the neat house on the corner did not look like a crime scene so much as it looked like home, which made the discovery all the more shattering. He called himself BTK: bind, torture, kill. 3 cold verbs that read like an instruction. How does a boy who learned to fold his hands for prayer become the man who signed his work BTK? This is Archive 47, where buried crime and mysterious cases breathe again. Dennis Lynn Rader was born on March 9th, 1945, in Pittsburgh, Kansas, the oldest of 4 boys in a working-class family. His father, a mechanic, and his mother, a homemaker, worked long hours, leaving Dennis with long stretches of solitude. The post-war Midwest offered a picture of order: neat yards, clipped hedges, the rhythm of church bells on Sunday mornings. From the outside, the Rader household looked like every other family on the block. Inside, however, Dennis carried secret shadows. As a boy, he discovered impulses that disturbed even himself. He strangled cats and dogs in the quiet fields behind the neighborhood, fascinated not with blood, but with control. The moments when life surrendered under his grip, he buried those acts under the mask of normal childhood, collecting Boy Scout badges, keeping his shirts tucked, his hair neatly combed. Teachers described him as polite, quiet, and dependable. Neighbors saw a boy who mowed lawns, attended Sunday school, and blended into the fabric of Wichita life. But inside, fantasies grew. He was aroused by images of bondage and cross-dressing, feelings he would later call projects. He cut out magazine clippings, scribbled private notes, rehearsed scenarios in secret notebooks. At home, he played the role of the good son. In private, he rehearsed another role entirely: the captor, the controller. By the 1960s, Rader studied electronics, joined the US Air Force, and returned home to marry Paula Dietz in 1971. They settled into a small Wichita house, raising 2 children. From mid-1972 to mid-1973, he worked as an assembler for the Coleman Company, an outdoor supply company where 2 of his victims, Julie Otero and Catherine Bright, also worked. From 1974 to 1988, Rader worked at the local Wichita office of ADT Security Services, where he installed security alarms. Ironically, many of his clients were concerned homeowners seeking security from his own killings as BTK. At his job, he was described as a polite social man, but by night, his darker self took shape. Behind closed doors, he began to prepare kits: ropes, tape, knives, stored neatly in boxes, waiting for the moment when fantasy would spill into action. On a frigid January morning in 1974, Wichita would awaken to a nightmare it could not yet name. 4 members of the Otero family, father, mother, and 2 children, were found bound, gagged, and strangled inside their modest home. The killings had the precision of ritual. Cords tied, just so. Bodies arranged with grim deliberation. After his 2005 arrest, Rader claimed that he first targeted the family 2 months prior, when he spotted Julie Otero leaving to take her children to school, and stalked them for 2 to 3 weeks. On the morning of the murders, Rader parked his car and walked to the Otero home, scaled a fence, and cut the phone lines when in the backyard. It was after this that Joey let the dog out the back door to the backyard, where Rader confronted him and forced his way into the home at gunpoint. Initially, the family thought it was just a robbery, so they complied with him. Rader told the Otero family that he was wanted in California before ordering them at gunpoint to lie on the living room floor. Then he led the family into a bedroom and bound them with rope he had prepared ahead of time. Joseph and Joey were on the floor, while Julie and Josie were on the bed. What followed was a calculated display of power and control that would define his signature: the deliberate infliction of fear, the precision of restraint, and the chilling patience of a man fully absorbed in his own ritual. When it was over, 4 lives were gone, 2 parents and their children, and Wichita had unknowingly met BTK for the first time. Only months later, in April, Rader struck again. Catherine Bright, a 21-year-old college student, was attacked in her home. She was stabbed repeatedly. Her brother Kevin survived but was gravely wounded. Wichita police searched desperately, but there were no fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing but the horror left behind. By 1977, BTK had murdered again. Shirley Vian, a young mother while her children were locked in the bathroom. Months later, Nancy Fox was strangled in her apartment. After Fox's murder, a letter arrived at a local TV station. It was a confession, written in chilling detail, signed with 3 letters that would haunt Wichita for decades. BTK. The killer had given himself a name. The years that followed brought more deaths. Maureen Hedge in 1985, Vicky Wegeler in 1986, Dolores Davis in 1991. Each crime carried the same hallmarks: surveillance, forced entry, bindings with cord or nylon, and trophies taken, driver's licenses, jewelry, photographs. He called his victims projects, documenting them with meticulous notes. In between murders, he lived as a husband, father, church leader, and dog catcher, the mask of respectability never slipping. Then silence. From 1991 to 2004, BTK seemed to vanish. Wichita breathed easier, thinking the spectre had finally died or moved away. But in reality, Rader was merely dormant, tending his family and career while his obsessions simmered. What pulled him back into the light was not hunger for blood, it was hunger for attention. In 2004, 30 years after his first murders, BTK re-emerged. He began mailing packages to the press. Photographs, victim IDs, mocking puzzles. In one message, he asked police if communication through floppy disks could be traced. The answer returned publicly: no. Taking the bait, Rader mailed a disk. Forensic experts quickly uncovered the hidden metadata. The file had been created at Christ Lutheran Church by a man named Dennis. February 25, 2005. Wichita police moved quietly through suburban streets. Their target, a middle-aged man, driving a beige Jeep Cherokee. They surrounded him at an intersection and pulled him from the vehicle. His name was Dennis Rader, president of his church council, compliance officer for the city, husband and father of 2. To his neighbors, he was a man who trimmed his lawn with military precision, attended barbecues, and offered a polite wave. To investigators, he was finally unmasked as BTK. The search of his home was less dramatic than the farmhouse horrors of past killers. but it was no less damning. Tucked into closets and drawers were trophies, driver's licenses, jewelry, and Polaroids of victims posed in death. Boxes of notes documented his projects with chilling detail, sketches, diagrams, plans for attacks that had never happened. It was the archive of a man who lived a double life with terrifying discipline. When the floppy disk metadata tied to Christ Lutheran Church first pointed to Rader, police had cross-checked records, tracked his Jeep, and gathered DNA evidence that matched semen recovered at a 1986 crime scene. It was the convergence of old-fashioned legwork and modern forensics that tightened the noose. In court, Rader's calm confession stunned the nation. Standing before the judge, he described each murder step by step, his preparations, bindings, the projects completed. His voice was steady, his tone clinical, as if he were reciting instructions from a manual. Families of the victims wept openly, hearing the last moments of their loved ones laid bare in the killer's own words. On August 18, 2005, Dennis Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms, 175 years without parole. The courtroom was silent as the sentence was read. Dennis Rader now serves 10 consecutive life sentences at El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas, confined primarily to solitary areas within the prison. Psychologists who studied him extensively concluded that he is a textbook example of an organized serial killer. Meticulous, controlled, socially functional, yet deeply detached from empathy. His calm demeanor, even during confessions, highlights an unsettling compartmentalization. He could live as a church leader, a husband, and a father, while secretly harboring homicidal compulsions. Experts describe him as a predator who relied on routine, manipulation, and a rigid adherence to self-imposed rules to mask his dark urges. For his family, the legacy is intensely personal. Rader's daughter, Kerry Rawson, wrote A Serial Killer's Daughter, chronicling the profound shock of discovering the truth about her father. She described her father as a loving, ordinary man at home, yet a monster in secret. "I still love my dad," she reflected, "but the person I knew was a mask. He lived in church and killed in the dark. Understanding him doesn't make it easier, it just makes it more horrifying." Her words underscore the psychological complexity of living alongside someone capable of such duality.